Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
Hi.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on your province.
Oh, right. So good afternoon for you. Good morning for me.
Good morning.
It's early morning for Kenny. So Kenny's Vancouver, I'm Toronto. And are you Halifax?
Very close, about an hour and a half. We're in an area that we call the Valley, the Annapolis Valley. So just an hour from Halifax.
Okay.
Lovely.
A beautiful area.
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm in my office where I have the best internet connection in the Gasprolik in our vineyards. It's absolutely bucolic. It's idyllic. It's everything that we would want to show, but the internet is terrible. So something's got to give.
Something's got to give.
You can't have it all.
But
I'd rather have the ideal.
It's more beautiful too because it can't be touched by
Exactly.
Do you know?
Right. You can't have our cake and eat it too.
That's
well,
right.
actually, it's better. You enjoy it. Walk it.
Which
absorb
is probably
it.
the cardinal lesson of business, that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Probably.
That doesn't
Something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't stop us, I guess.
No.
Being retail and salespeople, and you're a winemaker, so we all definitely want it.
Yeah, that's right. We all aspire to it. It's
it's
a great elusive goal that we all.
Something to shoot for, boys. Something to shoot for.
Correct.
This is amazing. Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
You are most welcome. It's my absolute pleasure. And I'm absolutely delighted to be with you today.
Yeah. Okay. So for listeners, Jean, we've already started recording. We kind of do this and we kind of roll soft into this, but for listeners, we're going to be talking to Benjamin Bridge today with the folks at Atlantic Food and Bev introduced us to Benjamin Bridge, and what a cool brand with a pretty good story. And so what we asked for and got from Benjamin Bridge, was their head winemaker jumping on. So we'll ask you to introduce yourself in a second, but we're really excited that Jean-Benoit was able to come on and talk to us. So for you, Jean-Benoit, we're an unscripted podcast, so we don't really ask a ton of questions. We're super curious about you and who you are, how like I'm a sales marketing guy, Kenny's a sales marketing guy. How the heck do you become a head winemaker? We don't understand the succession plan or the or the process on how to get there, and then
the itinerary, the pathway.
Yeah, that's right, the career pathway. In case we have kids and I have kids going to uni, and head winemaker is not a career path that we are familiar with. So part of that will be this, and then honestly, where you are and the ability to churn out wine. It's, I will say, probably not typical. Being in Ontario, we have a Niagara wine region that we get wine, and Kenny's in Vancouver, so we've got the Okanagan. But
I don't think Nova Scotian wine.
Yeah, slightly unusual. So we want to hear about that because I think that's really
and
cool.
that can be just the ignorance of this side of Canada.
Absolutely, 100%.
Honestly, like it's not
100%. Yeah,
not together. So I'm dying to hear how this works. I think this would be super, super cool.
Yeah. So sir, this is the rest of this is all yours. So we'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then you take it wherever you want to go with us, and Kenny and I will kind of pepper you with questions and kind of find out more, and we'll go from there.
Nice looking bottles.
Well, thank you. Well, first, I will warn you, I'm unlikely to take a kind of a personal itinerary approach because we're now such a big team that most likely I will present the project and the collective that we are through that lens, and then you can ask specific questions. Please don't hesitate to interrupt or ask for a clarification. I also have a tendency to digress, which I know can be a blessing and a curse in these podcasts.
All good.
You're in good company.
Go wherever you want. We do.
You're going to have to play timekeeper, probably.
Good,
no, it's all good.
But yeah, in your introduction, we're already, I feel, a few questions that were kind of embedded into the intro, and I would be delighted to touch upon a lot of those things, hopefully very organically. And so essentially, I think that the starting point has got to be what I would describe as a common denominator between every fascinating wines on the face of the planet. There is one cardinal rule, there is one trait that will bind all the wines of interest on planet Earth. And that is the fact that for a wine to have any sorts of merit, it must capture something about the ecosystem where it is from, where the vines are growing and where the wines are made, that is essentially unmistakable, very, very clear, conveyed very transparently, and proportionally impossible to replicate anywhere else on the face of the planet. So if you were to travel to northern Italy, let's say to Piedmont, and over there they grow a grape variety for the Barolos and the Barbaresco called the Nebbiolo. Well, if you were to ask someone, like in the village of Barolo, do you think, that someone can come in, take a suitcase cutting of the genetic material that grows in the communal area, propagate it, and come to the exact same results in California or Australia? Obviously, the answer would be absolutely not. The identity and the signature from our wines has everything to do with place. And when it comes to Nova Scotia, what we have is a start to that equation that is absolutely fascinating, meaning that the Bay of Fundy that we have here, about an hour and a half north of Halifax, is home to the highest and strongest tides on the face of the planet. So there is more water, to quantify it, there's more water going through the Bay of Fundy on a daily basis than all the fresh water rivers of the world combined. So there is extraordinary turmoil. And to the extent that what you see immediately surrounding the Bay of Fundy is the emergence of ecosystems that are absolutely unique on planet Earth. And as a bit of a linear logic, simultaneously, if you keep going down that path of uniqueness and a stamp that is unmistakable and impossible to replicate, going back to the mid-90s, a husband and wife duo, Gerry McConnell and Dara Gordon, moved their family to the valley because there was a school there that they wanted their twin daughters to attend. And so they moved to the valley. And what they discovered, quite accidentally, was that the crops of the area had extraordinary quality. So a textural and kind of a depth of flavors in the local apples and the local blueberries that you simply, could not find elsewhere. It was like night and day, between apples and small berries grown in other ecosystems. And so essentially the proposition of Benjamin Bridge from day one was to see if that je ne sais quoi, that is the sum of all parts that make a growing environment, could translate into the creation of wines, that would really make a splash internationally. Because there was already an emerging wine region. There were a handful of wineries, maybe 4 or 5 at the time in the valley. And so there was a lot of curiosity, interest, and most importantly, a lot of intuition in kind of connecting those dots. And so they bought a property in 1999, and the twin daughters at the time would have been in high school, and so they had to do all the land prep themselves with their friends, like picking all the rocks, and they planted a vineyard with organic principles, to start. You'll learn later in our story, that there were obviously kind of different stages to our sustainability as it pertains to soil, not all of which will include organic certification. So I just want to make that clear. But way back when, the idea was that there was the Gaspro River running at the very base of the property, and that under no circumstances the growing of those grapes could translate in anything that would run off or into the river, that could harm the ecosystem. So that was at least 15 years prior to the rise of industrial organics, or like an organic section at the grocery store. At the time, like at the turn of the millennium, organic wines were actually considered clumsy wine, like made by hippies, and not quite up to par, with the great wines of Bordeaux, Burgundy, and so on and so forth. So I'm sorry for that little tangent, but going back to the to the early days and the genesis of Benjamin Bridge, there was always this intention of doing something out of the ordinary. And so the founding principle of Benjamin Bridge was that if they could not do something, that would send somewhat of a shockwave, through the world of wine, and that would help Nova Scotia shine, on the international stage, that would be essentially failure, and they would de facto abort the project. So that was kind of the
goals. Very lofty goals.
Yeah, and especially like in hindsight, realizing that the wine industry in Nova Scotia, 25 years ago, did not have this precedent of necessarily kind of shocking the world with wines, that were, let's say, called by the wine critics, because at the time, approbation and success in wine came through, the approval and approbation of critics. So that's very different. Just like, for example, movies now, you don't go to the bookstore to buy like a book on movie reviews, right? To decide what VHS you're going to rent. And although I'm sure like Rotten Tomatoes still exists, people take the pulse of kind of more of an online feel for if something is a hit or a flop, but I don't think that there is a movie critic that can kind of make or break you. It'll be judged in the court of public opinion or something like that. And wine is the same way now. So if something is deemed delicious in 2024, a critic, will not really have as much of a make or break incidence on your commercial success. But way back when, that's how the world of wine worked. You needed like a score from Robert Parker or the Wine Spectator. But those days are behind us now. Okay, that was my predisposition to digress. Going back again to the genesis.
Sir, you're not digressing. We actually, I'm having a good time already. So
we digress with you anyway.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to figure out how we went from moving kids to a valley to deciding, hey, let's pick some rocks out of the field and we should plant grapes.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, there might be a little variable that was missing there, kind of in my story, which is that en route to the school in question in the valley was a vineyard that was planted with all of this symmetry, the symmetry of the rows.
Right.
And so that kind of like aesthetic appeal, was a bit of a factor because, when you go back to something that doesn't exist, you rely really on vision and thoughts and ideas, but not really on something that is, concrete or a done deal yet. So that symmetry was very attractive. And so that participated in this idea that maybe a vineyard, could be the perfect channel, the perfect outlet for this ecosystem that really has a story to tell in the style and the identity of the crop that it produces. But beyond that, of course, Gerry and Dara were wine aficionados. I wouldn't say that they were wine fanatics, but they absolutely enjoy wine with the meal. So
so there really was something there. So it wasn't like, I mean, I guess logically, I'm thinking, doesn't sound like there's a lot of wineries there at the time. So
that's
it's
right.
Not like
that's
you go
right.
through the Okanagan where there's vineyards. So I'm thinking, you know what? If you want to do something gross, we could grow apples or probably apple trees. Like it's just like it seems to me
that's
like
right.
Such a fun. I mean, I guess BC did it too. We used to have peaches and apples all through the Okanagan, and it went to wine as obviously the industry grew. But I really just don't. I guess it's me. It could be just me. I don't.
Yeah.
Nova Scotian wine just doesn't seem to. You know what I mean? Like
it's
exactly.
already. Sorry, Jean-Benoit. It's a really interesting story already because there's a family component here, which we really resonate.
Love it.
Resonate with family. There is the capriciousness of a business where, most entrepreneurs in Canada, they don't start it because they go, I'm focused on something, I'm going to do it. Something happens along the way that piques their interest. But then what's really cool is there's this moment of like the family picking rocks out of a field.
Yeah.
But you got to reconcile that with, listen, if we can't, excuse the language, but if we can't fucking rock this on the global scene, we ain't doing it, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
all
stuff.
It's kind of cool. Like you got me, man. I want to hear.
I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
I feel like maybe wine was selected and grape growing was selected as, kind of the outlet for the most meaningful and impactful agricultural kind of outcome. So, and in a way, money has a way to kind of quantify, demand and value, right? Yeah. And so if you go in a Michelin 3-star restaurant, you will have wines on the list that are valued, let's say at $30,000, $40,000 a bottle. Like, right. What other crop? Like even a cigar, right? Maybe like you could say like a crop of tobacco may be subjected to like this extraordinary valuation, but there is absolutely something unique about kind of the added value in winemaking and its valuation as a finished product. So I feel like it really embodied kind of the highest echelon of agricultural impact. And so therefore kind of that guiding principle of doing something extraordinary or else aborting the project was also kind of embodied in the fact that they at the time went after kind of knowledge and services, to achieve, those goals. And so what they did is they sought the consultation services of another husband and wife duo, Peter Gamble and Anne Sperling, who were instrumental in the growth of the Ontario wine industry. So Peter founded the VQA and was president of the VQA for a long time, but most importantly was also behind the emergence of some of the most renowned wineries in Niagara. At the time he was involved with a project called Stratus, and Anne grew up on a vineyard in the Okanagan. They also had a project in Argentina. So they came in, and really it's Peter Gamble and Anne Sperling, obviously with Gerry and Dara by their side, that determined that there was a climatic parallel between the Gaspereau Valley in Nova Scotia and Champagne 25 years ago. So there was this undeniable climatic correlation between the two. And on that basis, they determined that Nova Scotia was not going to be a jack of all trade or was not suited to do a little bit of everything. That there would be, again, a bit of a linear logic where a highly specialized microclimate should translate in a proportionally specialized portfolio of wines. And that is a model that we see in Europe quite a bit.
Right.
There's a fundamental difference between the European model and the North American model when it comes to wineries. If you go to a winery in Niagara or in California, essentially the proposition is, welcome to our wine emporium. Would you like a red, a white, a sparkling, a rosé, a dessert wine, a port? We've got them all, which is a byproduct of kind of like this North American ethos of business where you must cater to as many needs as possible under one roof. But if you travel to France and you go to Champagne, they only make Champagne. They don't even make a red wine or, like a still white. They through an evolutionary process, so through natural selection over a period of approximately 200 years, each communal area in the European appellation system has selected sometimes only one grape variety that they grow, and that's all they grow. Like in Sancerre, for whites, it's just the Sauvignon Blanc. It's not anything else. So you think about all these appellations, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Chablis, all these great names is often only one single grape variety. Obviously, Châteauneuf-du-Pape is the complete opposite, but that's a different story.
I think Brunello. Like when I think
Brunello, yes,
it's Brunello. Right. I know what I'm getting.
That's right.
I don't want to. Don't tell me you have anything else. Don't tell me.
That's right. You don't go there for their sparkling wines. And so that is such a profound difference between that model and this like kind of North American wine emporium model, where a winery is mandated to do everything. Otherwise, behold, a customer may come in and not find what they're looking for. But so that was something else that was intrinsic, to the creation of Benjamin Bridge, is that there was going to be that leap of faith of specializing. And the specialty was going to be traditional method sparkling. So Benjamin Bridge was founded as a sparkling wine house. And as such, they went to a wine critic. So that would be Peter Gamble, Gerry, Dara. I don't know that the twins, they'll be very important in this story to come. But at the time, I think since they were still in high school, I don't think they participated in these early interactions.
Never know.
Well, they certainly
Italian home, we would have. It's all good.
Oh, I know, and they certainly would have been aware of it all.
For sure.
But let's say Gerry, Dara, Peter, and Anne went to a wine critic. Back to the importance of wine critics at a time. So there's a wine critic by the name of Tom Stevenson out of London in the UK that was known as the undisputed reference on the subject of Champagne.
Right.
And he had written the Christie's Encyclopedia of Champagne. He was the reference on the topic. And so they went to him and they said, well, Tom, we're starting an ambitious traditional method sparkling wine house in Nova Scotia, Canada. We did the climatic study. We did the soil analysis. We think, this is, the potential is off the charts. We need you to recommend the best traditional method sparkling winemaker and consultant on planet Earth. Doesn't matter who it is. Can you recommend someone that would consider coming and consulting on the project to give us a chance of producing something at the highest possible level of quality? And Tom Stevenson came up with the name of Raphael Brisebois, who was the chef de cave at a champagne winery called Piper Heidsieck. And Raphael came to Nova Scotia, agreed to come to Nova Scotia, but was very skeptical at first. Wonderful human being. So I don't want to.
But he didn't believe.
It was such a
man, get in there. Right. Can't believe it.
And again, we'll probably echo, kind of the sentiments that you expressed earlier, which is that variable of surprise, like wine and Nova Scotia. But just imagine if you're.
You can do climate studies all day. I'm happy for you. I'd be thinking the same. I think, sure, if you really want to spend the money and try, we can do anything, I guess. But come on, it's Nova Scotia. We're not talking Champagne.
That's right. And so so he was unsure at first, to the extent that the story goes that he thought that Nova Scotia was right next to the North Pole, and
Everybody thinks that.
yeah, could not be more different in actuality, but because we have winters that are significantly milder than Montreal and Toronto, but and by a significant margin. But nonetheless, he thought it was right next to the North Pole, and also we couldn't take his photo, for his first visit. But that only lasted a few days, because essentially what they did is they were gracefully hosted by another winery owner that had collected or made wine since the early 80s. And so they went in the cellar, and Raphael, being the wine kind of luminary that he was able to pick up on that thing, that thing that speaks louder than the clumsiness of the winemaking. Right. That thing that speaks louder than this unusual grape variety that was grown. This stamp from place, that had the absolute kind of perfect je ne sais quoi for traditional method sparkling, which is a combination of brightness, freshness, acidity, but also kind of like something that is extremely substantial, dense, rich, and kind of profound from a textural point of view. So the wines can be stylistically coming out of left field. A wine professional of his caliber can still kind of deconstruct it and look at one variable and say, what we're going to do is we're going to steal that variable that's here that money can't buy, because that comes from place, and we're going to make wine this way, according to the time-honored traditions of Champagne. And the combination of all those factors is going to give you something that will have your name kind of resonate in the wine world. And so that on that basis, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier were planted. The first wines were made in 2002, and they were 10 years in the making. So since this is a business podcast, like imagine the proposition of a traditional method sparkling that has to stay. So essentially, maybe I should describe what a traditional method sparkling is, like from a technical point of view, or the life cycle of a champagne or a sparkling wine. You actually have to age the base. Well, you have to ferment the base wines at harvest the way you would a normal white wine, still wine. But then a year later, you got to put this still wine in a bottle for a secondary fermentation by adding also a small amount of yeast and sugar. And an alcoholic fermentation is the transformation of the sugars, the glucose and the fructose, in alcohol and CO2 and as a byproduct. So in the case of a fermentation on the heels of harvest, the CO2 will escape in the environment. But if the fermentation takes place in a bottle that is sealed with a crown cap or a beer capsule, the CO2 has nowhere to escape. It's trapped inside, and so it becomes integrated in solution. And that is obviously the fizz or the mousse or the effervescence, the bubbles, and everything that makes it celebratory or that pops when you win the Stanley Cup. It's the secondary fermentation that will spray on your teammates. Yeah. So
we live in Canada, right? Like that's
yes.
It's been a long time since we popped the bottle.
But the magic of a traditional method sparkling comes from, the exponential gain in complexity that takes place, like in the bottle. So to really kind of maximize, the amount of depth of flavor, what you have to do is you have to be patient and keep a bottle on those fermentation lees in contact with all those solids for multiple years. And just to give you a reference point that's a little bit extreme, Dom Perignon has a plenitude system now in Champagne, and each step of plenitude is 7 years, and now they're at P3, meaning that the bottles stay on lees like this in contact with all the fermentation solids for 21 years before release. So
I didn't know that. Wow.
So therefore, there is kind of, in the world of traditional method sparkling, the more you can wait, the more special it is. It's not that simple, but
Right.
Somewhat.
I didn't realize it was that complex. I didn't realize that there was that much complexity. In making champagne or sparkling.
But since this is a business podcast, can you imagine the business implications of that? Because
you're broke for 21 years, and you pray to God for 21 years you sell.
That's extreme. In the case of Benjamin Bridge, it was more like 10 years. But 10
years is a long time, man.
It is a long time. Cutting checks and having like zero revenue. Like
exactly.
And notwithstanding how capital kind of like intensive. Everything is about first land, then planting, the plant material, the agricultural equipment, the tractors, obviously
you have to do it for 10 years in a row because
the
you
labor,
can't do one run and wait 10 years.
That's right, the labor, and then the winemaking equipment. Like I'm sure a lot of like in the audience, there are people that are all too familiar with the cost of processing equipment for any goods, right? Like, everything. So winemaking is the same way. Like a wine press is $250,000. Like that's like it's not. It's in that league, right, of highly specialized equipment, and even in wine, because there is this kind of variable that can be kind of Eurocentric, aristocratic kind of thing. Like there's high-end equipment that you can pay.
Can I ask you something? Stop for a second. So I mean, So in 1999, they purchased this land, right?
Yes.
So nothing's on it. So you have to prep it and plant. It doesn't grow next year. Like that's
the rock picking from the girls right there. Yeah.
Right. But so by the time, I guess what I'm trying to understand is by the time you plant the first harvest, how long do you have to wait? 3-4 years for the vines?
Yeah, you got it. Bang on.
And then you're waiting potentially 10 years on top of that. But I guess my point is like you're sinking money into this business venture 14 years.
Yeah.
Before you potentially see any revenue, they had to be doing some. I'm assuming they had to be doing something else in that time. Otherwise, starvation kicks in sooner or later, right?
Yeah. The most fascinating thing about that is that this was a project, kind of based on a true kind of genuine belief, like in what we were producing, but I wouldn't say kind of like infinite resources, because I know that the world of wine has, a few examples of these kind of maybe flagship or pet projects,
right.
Where, let's say, like money's no object.
Yeah, like Elon Musk has nothing better to do but to throw some money at a winery, right? Like,
that has never been the case with Benjamin Bridge. It was actually, like on a spectrum, let's say, between infinite resources and, kind of crazy, passionate, crazy ideas, definitely closer to the crazy
ideas.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like all in, betting everything on red.
It's a long bet.
Have you told the owners this? Because I don't want to put out a podcast that gets you fired because you call them crazy.
Oh, no. I mean,
I think by virtue of being in wine, you have to be crazy anyway.
Because we don't really know Jean-Benoit, but I also don't want him to get fired because he just called the owner crazy.
Yeah, no, that's very kind. But to be perfectly honest with you, I feel like kind of part of what I'm saying in my world is highly complimentary, because I'm so proud to be part of a collective and a project, like where people work really, really, really hard, and also are absolutely committed. And it is strictly kind of like coming from a place of passion, but not coming from a place of privilege,
right.
or from a place of decadence.
Right.
And so.
Okay.
That is the part to be distilled here, and I actually sign off on that comment. And by crazy, there's something to be said. Like, there's definitely a beautiful side to that as well. Like, it's not just the, like, I didn't mean it in a clinical term. Like,
I think honestly though, Jean-Benoit, I think you got to be nuts to do this. I think you really do. I think there's got to be I mean, seriously, it's not logical. Like, if you really look at it from a standpoint of a business, to potentially wait 14, 15 years to achieve revenue, and you don't even know. So first off, you don't know on year 3, 4, or 5 if the grapes are going to be any good or they're going to grow. So that's first risk.
Yeah.
Second, if this process is that long, how the hell do you know if it's going to be any good at the end? I mean, you're hoping, but that's a lot of pressure on hope.
Oh, for sure. But and again, I'll just open a little fast forward window to 2024 in the context of this, this dialogue. And, if you fast forward to today, Benjamin Bridge is a business that sustained itself. Like, there is no, so essentially, we have to find kind of like our solution for growth, for economies of scale, for, that's right. So all of those things, we have to find the solution from within or from our operation to essentially graduate to these opportunities of growth and scale. And so, but it doesn't come from kind of the intervention of extraordinary privilege or wealth. Yeah. And that's it's something to be proud of, I think. Personally.
I think so too. I mean, it's quite the passion project.
I also think that this is one of those things that you realize, because we compliment founders all the time on their vision, but I feel like if you're a winemaker or, in this case, like what you guys are doing at Bennett, like this is a next level of vision, right? Because it does take 20, because most founders get into things and they kind of set themselves like a 5 to 10 year window. I've got to be able to make money, but at year 10, I'm starting to, but you actually have product to work with, right? Like most classic businesses, you have versions that you can iterate. In your case, like, holy crap, you got to wait a long time before you make any corrections, right?
Yeah. One factor that was really crucial in essentially like making this form of patience like sustainable and bearable was that the first wines were made in 2002. So although it took 10 years for the first traditional method sparkling to be released, throughout that 10 years, there was an opportunity to really relate to the wines that were made. And so both through the assessment of Raphael Brisebois and wine critics that would come in and visit, kind of the early installations of Benjamin Bridge, these bottles were open, and there was a clear sense that, by the time we released our first traditional method sparkling, we had accumulated 8 vintages of wines that would shock the wine world. And they did, again, I know in the interest of time, we may have to fast forward a little bit, but they ended up, in Michelin 3-star restaurants, in Europe. And they ended up really kind of defining the traditional method sparkling scene in Canada for the Canadian wine industry. Wow. So, but that was, there were definitely more than just hints of that, there was something tangible, like these wines were all made and they were showing extraordinary promises in their early days. So that kind of keeps you going, because that you may have to wait a little bit, but that beware, when they come out, well, first the wheel is in motion from that point forward, but you're going to have extraordinary wines forever, because that first 6 years on lees, we still have today. We're not losing that with time. We're still releasing, we're disgorging this week, actually, a Brut Reserve 2017. So that is exactly that, the exact same 6 years, aging on lees between 2004 and 2010. So, I will, in the interest of time, again, I'll fast forward to 2009.
Yeah.
Which is, again, and I'm sorry for going kind of back and forth in the timeline.
No, do your thing.
No, this story
is
great.
A more linear trajectory, for the audience. But
you're used to us. We were not linear. Don't worry about it.
For the exact same reasons that we discussed the extraordinary kind of perils and the difficulties of not generating any income or revenue for like a 10-year period. There was definitely the idea that a kind of a quick to market wine could be made, like if it was done in a way that is kind of like equally as fascinating, artisanal, extraordinary, and kind of like capturing kind of all the values of the brand, because you cannot like devalue the brand and then release these extraordinary traditional method sparkling a year or two later. But there's so Peter Gamble, again, the consultant from Ontario, was very instrumental in essentially imagining that the extraordinary aromatics that grow here in the valley because of the influence of the Bay of Fundy. As the tides go up and down 18 meters a day, it pushes a constant influx of tidal air in our vineyards, like our longs or bellows. So, and that allows the freshness to remain unspoiled in the grapes during the growing season, but it also preserves a fair amount of aromatic compounds that are really magnified in the wines. And so what he did is he kind of came up with a formulation for something that could have some similarities with a Moscato d'Asti, so like a sparkling muscat, but completely different because it has the degree of kind of freshness and vibrancy that is intrinsic or really native to our growing environment and our ecosystem. And so in a way, although aromatically it has a very floral kind of tons of like floral notes, it is in a league of its own, like on the palate, because it has a degree of acidity and brightness that is unlike anything else. So it was absolutely consistent in terms of class and finesse and elegance, with what we wanted to do. So that was released in the 2007 vintage was released in 2008. And that was a wine called Nova 7. And just to tell you what this little unassuming wine did is in the course of 6 years, Nova 7 exponentially grew. Like we were sold out the first year in about 2 weeks. And then we made twice as much the next year. So we exponentially grew like this to the point of Nova 7 becoming the highest selling wine in Nova Scotia, all countries and categories combined. And that is the first time that an artisanal local product outperformed an industrial wine from overseas, because these highest selling wines are not like wild fermented, locally grown wines, like made by hand. They're industrial wines, anyways, I won't name any names, but, we can think of these kind of larger brands. And so Nova 7 did the unthinkable by actually surpassing, kind of these conglomerates, right, and industrial products in sales. And it was really the driver, for us kind of becoming a really important community project and really establishing our rapport of sustainability with the community as like a place of renewal and growth. And so there's a couple of anecdotes, including one that we have. There was an economic downturn with the Apple industry, and we set up shop. To expand the Nova 7 in a facility that was shut down in that context, and we reopened it on the basis of the commercial success of Nova 7, and rehired the same people that lost their jobs, and
awesome.
And so that's that's something else that transpired in our history. And right around that time, the release of the Nova 7, something that's really important about kind of the story of Benjamin Bridge, and something that kind of defines us ever since, is that sadly, Dara, Gerry's wife, passed away suddenly of cancer. And so the twin daughters, back to the twins, Ashley and Devon, on that day, they essentially inherited a winery. They were 26 years old, and Ashley had just graduated from law school and was starting at Article. And her twin sister, Devon, had just graduated with her master's in architecture. And they were going to embark on their respective career. Instead, they decided that they were going to see their parents and their family's vision through. And they put their respective careers on ice. To this day, never practiced, in their areas. And instead, have been, the driving force behind Benjamin Bridge. And just have, really spearheaded our growth into the project that we are today, like B Corp certified, and brought in, kind of like a really important kind of set of values that we feel are going to shape and equip us, I think, for the future. So
that's pretty amazing.
Wow.
To pick up the parents' vision and be able to
and run with it.
Do that. Yeah.
And actually maybe even improve on it without being.
Oh yeah, I would say from that day forward, it's been really all about them. Because Gerry was never really involved in the day-to-day. Obviously, remained as a trusted advisor and mentor. But in the day-to-day, it's really been kind of the twins ever since.
Jean-Benoit, how long you been with them?
I've been with Benjamin Bridge for 17 years, and
17 years.
Again, my apologies for the constant traveling back in time as opposed to a more linear story.
We actually quite enjoy it. So yeah.
So the chef de cave at Piper Heidsieck, Raphael Brisebois, was I was a winemaker in California at the time. I'm from Quebec originally, and he hired me to come and be the winemaker at Benjamin Bridge. But that was in late 2007, early 2008.
So like you're pretty much on first release, like you've been around.
I would have come in before the first commercial release, yes. But at the time, the vineyards were planted, and obviously there was also already a vision, which essentially is why I came. I came to Nova Scotia because it was really palpable that there was this kind of like extraordinary project coming to life with a tremendous amount of passion. But also human qualities, which is something that is really, really interesting. Like, it's interesting how much of an impact it can have, on defining who we are and defining the wines that we make and how we go about doing business. And it's a long evolutionary story that goes back multiple generations. It's a multi-generation story. Gerry actually was a lawyer by trade, and back in the late 60s, Nova Scotia was one of the very last places in North America where you can tap into a currency of cheap labor, where there wasn't a huge premium on human life. And I know it sounds crazy, but if there was, for example, a mining accident, there would be a tribute at the pub, the night of, and that was it, pretty much, and so Gerry is responsible for some profound transformation as a labor lawyer. He was a freedom fighter, and he would have unionized, the miners of Sydney, but also many factory workers, and those were the days, right? Like the counterculture movement of the 60s and but all of those values you can see them from an evolutionary point of view, kind of like being really at the core,
Core of it, for sure.
Of who we've always been from day one, like them deciding that they were going to grow sustainably, from day one, and then this extraordinary decorum, of treating everyone with respect at all times, and so if you look at our identity today, that's probably one of the things that we're most proud of, because quality, times have changed. So let's take like Hell's Kitchen, for example, or something like that, a model where there is an absence of human quality in the name of excellence. Well, that's not who we are. We believe that, we can treat each other with extraordinary respect and decorum, and produce extraordinary wines, in that sense, we absolutely want to have our cake and eat it too.
Right. So the valley that you're in right now, so I'm just going to go back and forth because I'm not linear either. So you're going to have to watch digressions here too. But the valley you're in now, so is it predominantly, have you guys been sort of the lead where it's predominantly sparkling now? What is this? Is this what it's become? It's like this now, if I do it this way, in BC, I think we're pretty much known for white wines more so than reds.
Correct.
Right. And it's because of terroir and the climate and the winds that run through the Okanagan Valley and how the sun hits the mountainsides, yada, yada, yada. It's the same sort of thing you're talking about, where you really become that people. But were you guys able to, push the industry that way because you guys knew what you were doing, you saw it, it just made sense? And have you sort of done that, or is it all over the place?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, and that's a great question. And so, indeed, there is definitely a certain brand or idea of diversification in our adaptation to the future. That is unquestionable. But it's really important in doing so to really drive our innovations with our time-honored tradition. So the two are not separate, they are not contrary, to one another. And to the opposite, again, if you use kind of your skill set, from making these extraordinary traditional methods sparkling for 25 years, well, that is precisely the skill set that you want in, for example, our non-alcoholic pursuits. And because speaking of the Nova 7, I was talking to its commercial success earlier. Well, we feel like we were first to market with a proposition that is inevitable in the world of wine, which is that if you look at the difference between non-alcoholic wine and non-alcoholic beer, it is profound, because in non-alcoholic beer, all the iconic brands have their non-alcoholic version. Corona, Heineken, Guinness. But you don't see that in the world of wine. There is no Moët Chandon non-alcoholic. There's no Kim Crawford non-alcoholic. There's no J. Lohr non-alcoholic. That doesn't exist. And there's a technical reason why that is. And that's because the technology that's available right now, reverse osmosis, does very well at low alcohol content. Let's say the alcohol content of beer, 4 to 5%, because you pay a qualitative price or a qualitative tax for each percent of alcohol that you offset. And so if you remove 4% alcohol, you'll pay a modest price. And so your non-alcoholic version is going to be quite connected with the iconic reference point. But by the time you remove 13% alcohol, you create this extraordinary void, and you strip the wine from its character. So that has been the great decelerator, that is behind this profound difference in the marketplace. It's not because there is no demand for non-alcoholic wine; it's because the technology is not there yet. But we just launched Nova Zero, which is the non-alcoholic Nova 7, actually 2 weeks ago, and that is the very first time, to the best of our knowledge, that there is an iconic wine brand and its non-alcoholic alternative. And it took us 2.5 years to get there. And where it is absolutely fascinating is absolutely when you enter into that arena, you absolutely accept the challenge that the non-alcoholic version will be judged by its ability to be identical or near identical to the other one. And we feel like it's mission accomplished. So we're really happy. Yeah.
Wow. So that wasn't just sales bullshit. You actually believe this?
Oh, well, I mean, for sure. And the reason for that is not because I was 100% confident, because I wasn't. Like when you're the one kind of, releasing the product, and I didn't mean to speak at the first person. I meant more like we as Benjamin Bridge.
Yeah.
Obviously, you never know. Like, but that is the response, from people that have been drinking Nova 7 for 15 years. And that's the part that was really validating is how people that have been drinking Nova 7 for many years respond to it. Because it would be arrogant or promotional, I guess, to suggest otherwise if it just came from us. And
I guess why I'm asking, because you know what, I just got back from Germany, right? So, and okay, that doesn't matter, but I have gout, so I have to be careful with the alcohol. End up having an attack in Germany. Of course I don't do what I'm supposed to do. So I still drank alcohol beer, but I went to a lot of non-alcoholic versions. Yeah. And for the most part, really good.
That's right.
So like to the point where I'm thinking, shit, I really don't need to drink the alcohol. I mean, I can actually now sit down and have a beer at the table, and I'm okay because this actually tastes really good, really close. Mm-hmm. Never, ever yet have I found a wine that'll do that.
That's right.
So that's why, like, I'm super curious. If you guys have mastered this one or got this one, like, close, that's huge. Like, to me, huge. Because it would be great to sit down and have a wine at dinner again without having to worry about an attack or whatever, right?
That's right. And I wouldn't say, because it's close to Nova 7 as the reference point.
That's fine, but that's what you
Nova 7 in the first place would be different and not identical to a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, for example. So,
sure.
So I don't want to suggest that Nova 0
beers
is
were the
identical
same, though, right?
to a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
But beer's the same. I mean, not
like
as long as it matches the person.
Right.
If I'm a Corona drinker, I want the Corona to taste like a Corona.
Correct.
That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for, you know.
That's right. Like you're absolutely correct. Like the non-alcoholic Guinness is no emulation of the alcoholic Corona. Yeah,
no, I don't even. Yeah, we're not even talking in the same world, right?
That's right.
But if you can get close to each, because
I could send you a Nova 7 alcoholic, the original Nova 7, and the Nova 0, and yes, it's ready for the challenge. Yeah.
Good for you, man. If you honestly, that to me, that's the game changer that I'm waiting for, because I think the beer industry has been able to do it. They've got it. I mean, it's there'll be people that'll be people, and find all the nuances that are different. But for the most part, you can finally have a similar, which is really nice. Wine, I just have not found
that's
it.
Awesome. No, really, that's awesome, right? Because I think that is something that
huge.
You hear a lot, right? Is that you just don't want to give up, right? Like I don't want to give up taste. I don't want to give up those things. I want to be able to feel like I'm.
Yeah, and to that and in that sense, if you were to really kind of try to define kind of our skill set, it is to provide extraordinary sensory experiences that are connected to place. The alcoholic fermentation part, can absolutely be involved, and for the most part, it is because it comes with its own, kind of sensory merit. And the traditional method sparklings are the best example of that because of the magic that happens inside the bottle. But nonetheless, we feel like we can absolutely diversify and have a more inclusive kind of portfolio of product, and that our skill set that we learn fermenting, things into alcohol, we can apply to creating the best non-alcoholic products out there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for you. Wow.
Thank you so much. We're I feel like we could do this all day, but we're out of time.
Well, that's good. That's perfect. 1 hour on the dot.
We could have talked. Could have talked to you for half a day.
We could.
Like I'm dying to figure out if we're in the Maritimes in October, and I'm going to look at Phil see as he rolls his eyes. I'm thinking,
I'm not rolling my eyes.
How far is this from?
I'm thinking the same thing you are. So I'm trying to figure out. I've got a map. I'm trying to figure out.
Oh my God! Not only can you visit. Sorry, I should have jumped in way before. But yes, we would be absolutely delighted to have you both. And not only can you visit, but it is one of the most beautiful spots in the province, and it's an extraordinary experience. And we would love nothing more but kind of share our ecosystem with you.
I'd be thrilled to sit with you and have a glass of wine and
we'd be really delighted.
Wow.
Okay, we'll figure it out on our side, and then we'll send you some dates. But we will be out there for the Atlantic Food and Beverage award ceremony.
Well, then it's
you
got to come. You got it. You're going to be so close. It would be it would be silly not to.
You heard it, Phil. We don't want to be silly.
No, we won't be silly.
Silliness, Phil. We need to go. It's right there.
That's right.
Why are you making the case? I've already I'm in so.
Because usually I'm the one that comes up with these stupid ideas and they're 50,000 miles apart. I don't know where we are.
Yes. Yeah. Usually you do have the really crazy ideas, but this one makes a lot of sense.
Well, this is awesome.
We'll work it out and then we'll.
Yeah, there's consensus. You are preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
All over.
Thank you so much for sitting with us. So we really enjoy this. I think this oh my gosh, this story is fascinating, and then it's amazing, and can't wait to try it. I looked it up. I've got LCBO here in Ontario, and we could definitely get it. So I'm gonna go get some this weekend and give it a try. And we look forward to
very cool
meeting again in November.
We're easy to find online, benjaminbridge.com, and then we're probably able to ship, in most places. I don't know, I'm being very vague right now, but
listen, if you're a listener, definitely, if you're in Ontario, LCBO, it looks like you guys are distributed right across the country. But we'll put all the links down below. You guys know the deal. Go in and figure out where you can buy this stuff. So, I know I am for sure. So
I'm trying to see if we can find it in Vancouver.
Jean-Benoit, thank you so much for doing this. And then we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And then hopefully the stars align.
Get a chance to meet you in person.
in October. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to you both. Have a wonderful day. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and have a great weekend as well.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, take care, Phil. You stick around. Jean-Benoit, have a good day.
Bye.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. He's a winemaker and a storyteller.
If it's possible if it's not way out in left field.
No, I don't think it's way out in left field. I think actually the issue is as we talk to more Atlantic-based brands, we are finding more and more that we would like to be able to go see. So the only thing is could we afford to spend 2 weeks
no
in the Maritimes, right? I think that's really the question now. Because we've met some pretty amazing people. I mean, this episode will come out hopefully in a couple of weeks, but we also met we met Earthly last week, and Earthly's out there too, and he's super cool.
There's so many people. We got a problem now.
Yeah, we have a problem. Anyway, It's a national problem, and we love it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody.